Hello, Shalom Aleichem. Welcome back to another video in this series, Sabbath Prayer. Previously in this series, we have done both the Kiddush for Sabbath evening, Friday night, and the Kiddush for the Sabbath day meal. Now we are going to go and do the blessing on bread, the Hamotzi prayer that comes after the Kiddush. If you have not already subscribed to this channel, please go ahead and do so. Click the bell icon so that you receive notice of updates. Also, if you find this project or any other of my projects to be of use to you, to be of benefit, I wish you to consider becoming a patron over on Patreon, or potentially giving a small donation via PayPal. Your assistance is much appreciated. Okay, so let's begin. The Sabbath prayers, blessing on bread, the Hamotzi prayer. Okay, so previously we did the Kiddush. So typically, in the average person, there are communities that have slightly different customs regarding this. But typically, for the average person, they would go from the Kiddush prayer to washing of the hands. I mean, there is the small community of German Jews, Jews that are of German extraction. In Frankfurt, in Berlin, from families from places like this, have the custom actually for Friday night, actually have the custom to wash their hands before making Kiddush, and they go straight into the blessing on bread. But the vast majority of Jewish families in the world don't do like this. Okay, so we get up, we drink our wine, and then without too much delay, because this is also considered part of Kiddush, so without too much delay, we would get up from the table and we would go to the kitchen and we would wash our hands. I'll try to share a video from a video with instruction as to how we do this, but quickly we take a special cup that has a round lip, and it doesn't have a spout or anything like that on it, and we would pick it up with our right hand, pass it to our left hand, and then we would pour over our right hand. Of course, we would have our jewelry off, make sure that we don't have any kind of dirt or anything on our hands. This is a respectable meal. So make sure we don't have any dirt or anything like that on our hands. And we would then take and we would pour over our right hand with the cup in our left hand. We would pour over it 2 or 3 times, depending on your custom. And then you would pass the cup to your right hand and pour over that hand. With the cup in your right hand, you'd pour over your left hand 2 or 3 times. Okay, and then you would set it down, and then you would, while your hands were wet, you would hold them up, and you would recite the blessing over washing the hands. Now, my custom is actually to add a couple lines in. So let's go ahead and do those lines. So before I make the blessing, I would say, Su'u yedekum kodesh, lift up your holy hands, your sanctified hands. Uvarchu es Hashem, and bless Hashem. That comes from Psalm 134:2. And then I would say, Ve'esa kapai el mitzvosecha, I will lift up my hands, my palms, kapai, el mitzvosecha, to your commandments, asher ahavti, that I love, v'asicha b'chuchecha, and I will speak, I will discuss b'chuchecha, concerning your statutes. And again, that is a Psalm 119:48, the famous Psalm 119. The longest psalm in the book of Tehillim. And then, without a break, without making any kind of interruption, I would say the blessing, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu al netilas yadayim. Of course, I'm reading this in my natural Ashkenazis. If you don't pronounce Hebrew that way, then you would pronounce this according to your customary pronunciation. Okay, so from here, we would wash our hands, and we do not talk until we make the Hamotzi. We don't say anything, any sort of outside communication until we actually bless and eat the bread. Because this is we're washing our hands for the sake of the bread. So if we interrupt, it somehow or another it sort of breaks the connection. Okay, so but if, for instance, I'm sitting at the table and I don't, the bread knife is not on the table. So if I can, make to my wife or one of my kids, I can make sort of a knife motion to show that I don't have the knife. Then that's fine. If for whatever reason they're a little thick and don't get what I'm trying to hint at, I could actually say, "Please bring me the knife," so that because what I'm saying there is not considered an interruption, because I'm saying it for the purpose of the blessing, distributing the bread. Okay, so everybody else would wash. Now, in my house, the father washes last. The person, the head of the household, washes last, so that he has less of an interruption between the washing of the hands and the making of the blessing over the bread. It's generally a good policy. Okay, so the bread is at the table and it is covered. So typically we would take the two challahs, the two bread loaves, and we would stack them one on top of the other with the challah cover on top of it. And on Friday night, my custom is to take the bottom challah, and on Friday, and we do that again, we'll stack two challahs, two breads on top of each other during the day meal, and then my custom would be to take the one on top. And this is a hint at the double portion of man. What fell first would be consumed first, and what fell second, what was on top, would be consumed that day. If you remember from the Torah, a double portion of manna fell for the Israelites on Friday to account for their Sabbath meals. Okay, so I have the custom to actually, before making the Hamotzi, to actually say Psalm 23. This is not a common custom, so I'm not advocating that you do it. Psalm 23 is here. If you find yourself waiting around for whatever reason, somebody sort of gets lost on their way back to the table, and they take forever to get back to the table, then perhaps it might be a nice thing to read, and to say it inside without pronouncing it. There are communities that have the custom to actually say it with their mouth. I'm not advocating you do that, even though that is my custom. So here's the text of Psalm 23. I did this in the previous videos, so I'm not going to do this, but I did this in the two previous videos. This psalm is closely associated with Kiddush, with the Sabbath meal. And see those videos for the reading of this psalm. Okay, so finally, when everybody's at the table and people were ready to go, I would put my hands underneath the challah, underneath the challah cover, and I would make the blessing on the challah, and then I would take set the other challah and the cover aside, or the loaf and the cover aside, and I would take the challah that was my challah for that evening, for that meal, and so after making the blessings, I would take it. So let's go ahead and do the blessing. So I hold both challahs together with both of my hands on them, and I say, Baruch atah Adonai, blessed are you, O Lord, Eloheinu melech haolam, our God, King of the world, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, who brings forth Hamotzi lechem, bread, min haaretz, from the earth. At this point, I would set the challahs down, and then I would set the challah cover and the loaf that I was not going to cut aside, and I would start cutting the loaf of the loaf for that meal. So I would cut off a piece, and because I made the blessing, I would, as soon as I cut off a piece for myself, because again, it's me, I'm the one that made the blessing, I don't want to delay to actually eat the bread, so I would I would put salt on, there would be salt on the table, on the cutting board. I would dip it into salt lightly. My custom is to dip it 3 times, and then I would eat a good portion, a mouthful of that bread. And then I would see to cutting up for other people. The mother of the house has special status, so I'd take a second cut, and I would give her special, my wife, and then I would, and if there were any adult guests, I would do similarly. I would cut, and frequently if we have more than one guest, we'll have a little platter for bread. We'll cut however many slices there are for our guests, and then we would hand them to the guests, on the platter they would take. And then finally we would have children. My children, the platter would come back, and I would cut the amount of pieces of bread for the children, and they would take it according to their age. The oldest taking first. So that is the custom as it is done in my house. There are other ways, but more or less this is how it's done. Now all this is considered to be part of Kiddush, so it really should not be too much of a delay between the Kiddush and the making Hamotzi. Well, some people make the mistake of sitting and talking while they're drinking wine, for 10 minutes or so. That's really not optimal. It really should be done immediately after you have the appropriate amount of wine. And then once we make Hamotzi, once we bless the bread, bless God for having given us the bread, we would proceed with our meal, and the various courses of the Sabbath meal. This is the same, but both by the night meal and by the day meal on the Sabbath. In truth, this is really the same procedure for all meals involving bread. It's just that on the Sabbath, Kiddush and this are considered what's called a koveh suda, how we establish a meal. So that's what we would do. We would make these back to back. During the week, obviously, there's no Kiddush, so we just make we wash our hands, and then we would make the Hamotzi on a loaf of bread. During the week, there's no requirement of having 2 loaves. Again, the 2 loaves represent the double portion of the manna, of the man. Also, some sources say that the 2 loaves represent the double language of observing the Sabbath, Zachor v'Shomor. We talked about that in the previous videos. Zachor meaning remember the Sabbath, and Shomor meaning guard the Sabbath. So 2 loaves represent the 2 aspects of Sabbath observance. That's a nice explanation. Another interesting facet is that somehow or another the loaves themselves are taken to be connected to the Lechem Haponim, the showbreads in the temple. So there was a shulchan, a table in the temple, with 12 oddly shaped breads arranged on it. So some people, instead of 2 breads, have the custom to actually have 12 breads. They'll have 2 large breads, and then they'll have 10 rolls under the cover, and then they'll make the blessing that way and distribute the breads. Another custom is to have the 2 challahs, for each of those to have 6 strands. So that you braid together 6 strands. 6 and 6 make 12. So even though the 6 are on one side and they're in one loaf, originally there were 6 individual pieces of dough. So you make 12 loaves of bread, and that is somehow reminiscent of the showbread, the lechem aponim. Another possibility, and this really is the one that we use in my family, we have oblong loaves. The oblong loaf looks a little bit like the letter Vav in Hebrew, because it's just a straight line. So the letter Vav in the oblong loaf, since they look the same, the gematria, the number value of the Vav, is 6. So of course 6 plus 6 is 12. So that's how we get to the 12 showbreads. Anyway, all that is customary. Do according to your family custom. If you don't have a family custom, do according to what your rabbi or your community does. If you don't yet have a custom or a community, I don't advise you to be particular as this way or that way. Just wait to find out where you're going to belong and just do like they do. Okay? I wish you the best. I hope that was beneficial. Again, that was the blessing of bread after Kiddush. Hopefully we'll add to this series and add various other prayers that we say on the Sabbath. And we can, increase this. If you have any requests, feel free to contact me and let me know, and I will do my best to comply. Okay, thank you very much. Kol Tov, Hatzlacha Rabbah.